mean? Putting good pictures down.
Right, let's see.
Tell her.
No.
To start our engines, we'll be on our way just in a few minutes. With me here on the flight deck, Senior First Officer David Edmondson, Senior Engineering Officer Roger Bricknell. We have an extra man on board who will be talking to you during the flight, and Senior Engineering Officer Paul Lickett. Just to tell you a little bit about our flight, we'll be taking off to the west. Our routing takes us subsonically initially out towards the city of Bristol. We're not able to go through the sound barrier to work out over the water. So we go off down the Bristol Channel. Once we're far enough away from land, which is about in the beam of Lundy Island, we commence our acceleration through the sound barrier. And up to Mach 2.
No, wheelchairs, they were last minute bookers, so that's why they're down the back.
Head out then towards the near part of the Atlantic and commence a left turn, and our route will take us right around Land's End to come back up the channel and then decelerate again before we reach the Channel Islands, so we don't disturb people on the ground there. The routing takes us over Cherbourg, Southampton, and back here to London. You've chosen a smashing day for your trip. Weather conditions excellent, nice and clear. We're hopeful it's going to be clear all the way around. Forecast certainly is good, and so you should be able to see quite a lot. I'll leave you now then in the hands of Paul Eggington, and he'll be speaking to you and keeping you up to date with what's going on. I wish you a pleasant flight.
Yes, thank you very much, Derek, and hello. Welcome aboard our Concorde on behalf of British Airways Concorde fleet, and of course, Goodwood Travel. Now the guys up here are just finalising the paper, the load sheet, to make sure that all your good cells are on board, all the weights are correct for the aeroplane. This is a normal procedure for all commercial aeroplanes. As Derek said, it's a lovely day for flying, and we have a very nice aeroplane today, one of 7 in the British Airways Concorde fleet. And those of you who are able to look around outside will have noticed the registration number, but for any enthusiasts, just to repeat, it's Concorde Alpha Golf. The full number being G-BOAB. As I say, it's the 6th to be delivered to British Airways, the 7th in the fleet. She actually made her maiden flight on the 21st of April 1978, but she's a very young aircraft in terms of flying hours. Now we're starting our engines, and once again, nothing extraordinary about this, so we just used compressed air to start a pair of our inboard engines. We've got 4 Rolls-Royce Olympus turbojets, and we'll start 2 of our engines here on the gate before being pushed back onto the centre line, where we start the remaining 2 engines, and then of course taxi out and join the small queue of aircraft for our takeoff heading towards the west. Now I mentioned the aircraft registration number, AG, Alpha Golf. All other aircraft in British Airways are named after rivers, roses, cities, etc., but Concordes are just Concordes, so this is to say is Concorde Alpha Golf. Our takeoff to the west will be from the southern. We have 2 parallel runways here at London Heathrow, around 12,000 feet long, and we'll be using the southerly one, i.e. we'll be starting at the Hatton Cross end, heading off due west. And our route will take us, say very briefly, that's what Derek told you, up over Reading, then down over Bristol, where we start our supersonic acceleration. But more of that later. Les Hawksfield will be looking after you in the cabin, Home Service Director, and we have Liz Chairman down the back of the aeroplane in charge of the rear cabin. One question is very often asked about training for the aeroplane, but it's a pretty hefty conversion course. It takes the pilots and flight engineers about 6 months to go through the whole process of classroom, simulator and flight training. Our cabin crew on the Concorde, very highly qualified, was thrown on developing fighters and bombers, whereas the Americans are able to do that as well, but of course with their ginormous industries, we're also able to develop commercial transport aeroplanes, the Dakotas and the DC-4, Constellations, etc., specialist aeroplanes for transporting people. So after the war, we were left with converted bombers, Lancasters, which were formerly Lancaster bombers, converted Halifax bombers, etc., not really very good. And the Americans had a lovely range of piston-engine aeroplanes, and that led on, of course, to the development of the 707, etc. Whereas we in Europe thought the only way we can get ahead of Americans is perhaps do something really, do a quantum leap, and that was the thoughts of developing a supersonic transport. It was felt too much for one country to do, so in the end it was agreed that Britain and France would have a joint programme to develop a supersonic transport, which later became the Concorde. And two production lines were set up, one at Toulouse in France, the south of France, and one at Filton, just outside Bristol. Not really a clever idea in hindsight, but there we are. But all the various parts of the aircraft were all built in one country. By that, let me illustrate, all the forward end, the flight deck, the forward fuselage, those for what turned out to be 20 aircraft, were all built in Britain. Most of the wings and the rear fuselage were all built in France. So we had a situation there, these various bits and pieces were swapped, flown back and forth across the English Channel, and assembled in the two assembly stations, as I mentioned, in Filton and Toulouse. What is amazing about this, of course, that the French were metricated, we were good old pounds, feet, etc. Yet all the bits joined together quite nicely. In fact, it's very difficult to see the joints. Anyway, once I've been speaking, Roger Bicknell, our flight engineer, has started the two-inboard engine. We'll soon have air traffic control permission for the tug, which is mounted at the front of the aircraft here, to push us back onto the taxiway centre line. The lady in the control tower is looking after the man. She what we call the ground, like any other commercial transport. And we also use this fuel to cool the oils and lubricate the engines. The generators that give us our electricity, all these use fuel as a cooling medium. We also use it to trim the aeroplane because of our wide speed range. We don't have any tailplanes or horizontal tailplanes to adjust for the movement in centre of pressure, which other aircraft have. And so we move the fuel to balance the aircraft, a very sophisticated system. And also a little bit more later, but when we're going Mach 2, twice the speed of sound, Concorde heats up. She'll be well over the boiling point of water on the fuselage, and we use the fuel to cool the air as it's coming in to keep us alive. Now things are happening rather quickly here. We've now been cleared to enter the runway. We're going past the Virgin Atlantic 747-400 on our left here. And there's a Scandinavian 767 on the runway at the moment. And I think we're going off behind the Scandi. Yes, apparently we're after the Scandinavian 767, who's off to Arlanda Airport, Stockholm. Just think of that, 22 tons per engine per hour. But of course we'll only be using that amount of fuel more on the stitching forward for 34 seconds. And then to try and reduce the noise impact on the local population, we'll bring the engine back to a predetermined power, and we'll cancel the reheats, the afterburners. Say to try and make our passage over the local populace on this Sunday lunchtime as quiet as possible, if that is possible on Concorde. Our speed down the runway considerably faster than regular aeroplanes. And in fact, when Derek rotates the Concorde to put her in the sort of takeoff position, we'll be doing 206 miles an hour. Rapidly leave the runway at 242 miles an hour, accelerating up to just under 300 miles an hour. Now, when you saw the aircraft on the ground, when you came on board, she was streamlined with the nose and visor up. But now we have the visor down, the nose at 5 degrees. This is the takeoff setting. And I'll explain a little bit more about the nose and visor later on. There'll be another lady now, and she's just cleared Alpha Golf for takeoff. So here we go. Enjoy the sheer brute power of Concorde. There we are, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that. We're now airborne. Get away, I hear you say. 32,000 feet, reduced power, 300 miles an hour. And just to prove that I'm not telling porkies, when we go through 5,000 feet, there'll be displays in both cabins, the front and rear cabin, giving you such flight details of our speed across the ground, altitude, outside air temperature, etc. Through the air, the resultant centre of lift, the centre of pressure, moves to the rear of the wing, which obviously has a tendency to try and lift the tailplane up. More conventional aircraft have horizontal stabilisers, and thank you, Elaine, just got another message, which can adjust for this tendency of the tail trying to be lifted up. But of course, Concorde A doesn't have a horizontal stabiliser, and B, the terrific speed range, it would want so much aerodynamic input, it would be unacceptable. But of course, we're not there yet. We still have to reach the Bristol Channel. I'm struggling to read the gauges. Here we go. That's just 4 minutes' time. You see nothing but Roger Bitt on the flight there just says good view of Minehead on the left-hand side and South Wales on the right-hand side.
Oh, is it?
We'll use them from the start in just 3 minutes' time. Until we've got our aeroplane up, Concorde to 1.7 times the speed of sound. That's getting on for 1,100 miles an hour. We'll be passing through 43,000 feet. And then the whole engine airframe assembly is so efficient, we can do without the reheats and the afterburn. So we cancel. And you'll notice like a negative force as we switch them out 2 at a time. Anyway, we have just 2.5 minutes to go. And as 2 at a time, you'll feel that lovely nudge and kick. And then the aircraft will slowly accelerate to this very high drag area, say what we call the subsonic, the transonic region. And she'll slowly gather pace as she gets faster and faster. And it starts to get more efficient. Just 1 mile to go. Throttles wide open. Reheat's cutting in now.
94 Concorde and are not available anywhere else. Members of the crew will be coming through the aircraft to take mail orders for any of these gift items. In fact, we can sell anything from the brochure, apart from alcohol and cigars due to customs regulations. The goods that you order must be paid for by credit card. There is a £4 postage and packing charge with each order.
Because we're currently flying over the Cherbourg Peninsula in France. Now, air traffic control have been very, very helpful today. So we're going right overhead the airfield now. Then we'll head south before turning back.
Don't worry. See what else I need. Concorde Alpha Golf. We're currently at 4,700 feet. The city of London, our right-hand side. We're making our right-hand turn now. We're commencing our approach onto the right hand of the 2 parallel runways of Heathrow.
Heathrow, we then lower the landing gear. And once the landing gear is down and locked, we tip the nose even further down to 12.5. Just to remind you of this very high nose up attitude to get that lift, which I explained to you on the leading edge of the wing. This enable the pilots, if they get the nose down, stable the pilots to get a good view of the runway. Concorde, of course, is quite capable of doing fully automated landings. In fact, we had a gentleman on board who was part of the design team for the automatics of the aircraft, and a very good job they made too. And we have full category 3A capability in bad weather. That is that The captain has to make a decision at 15, and that's 1 or 5 feet above the ground. And providing the air traffic control people can give us a horizontal visibility of just over 200 metres, then Concorde can make an approach and land. And it is a superb automatic system indeed. Full-time auto throttles, one system controlling, the other one in immediate standby to take over should the first system fail. Jolly power. But as I speak, we're just 5 miles from the threshold of the runway, doing a steady 210 miles per hour, 1,500 feet above Mother Earth. Above Mother Earth, 0.7 mile for touchdown. Back to our landing speed, 180 miles an hour. Through 200 feet, I'm going to shut up now until the landing. And just be on your guard for that sharp increasing engine noise after touchdown. All quite normal. Well, there we are, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Heathrow. I think you'll agree that Captain Derek Woodley did a superb job with that landing. She is a lovely platform to operate, Concorde, but nonetheless, I think that was really a very nice touchdown indeed. Now we're slowing the aircraft right up. We bring the nose back up to its 5-degree setting. As with any other aircraft, I would ask you please to remain seated and keep your seatbelts fastened until we've brought the aircraft to a complete standstill and the seatbelt signs have been switched off. One gentleman in the rear cabin there used to fly the fabulous English Electric P1 Lightning, but nevertheless, I'm sure he'll agree that not many RAF pilots have the experience of flying prolonged Mach 2 flight. And certainly when you think that Concorde crosses the Atlantic to New York, which takes around 3 hours 20 minutes, of which 2 Concordes go every day, there'll be at least 2 hours at Mach 2. But anyway, once again, thank you all for being such good sports, and I hope the rest of your day is a nice one.
Oh, hang on. Bye-bye now. Take care, my dear.